Hi there, welcome everybody. I'm Dr. Ted Barnett. Some of you know me as Dr. Veggie. Others know me as the high-tech doctor with low-tech solutions. And I'd like to welcome you to one in a series of our Lifestyle as Medicine lecture series that's been put on by Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute for a number of years now. And we're very excited to be able to co-sponsor this event tonight with the JCC and the JCC of Greater Rochester, of course. And the topic tonight is Your Body in Balance with Dr. Neal Barnard. Dr. Neal Barnard received his medical training at the George Washington University School of Medicine. He's board certified by the American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology and a fellow of the American College of Cardiology. Dr. Barnard serves as an adjunct associate professor of medicine at the George Washington University School of Medicine. He founded the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, or PCRM, back in 1985. By 2016, PCRM had about 150,000 members, including 12,000 physicians. Dr. Barnard was inducted into the North American Vegetarians Hall of Fame back in 2011. He's also the recipient of the Lifestyle Medicine Trailblazer Award from the American College of Lifestyle Medicine in 2016, and in 2019 was awarded Plantrition Project's Luminary Award. He's the author of 18 books. Two of those early books, Food for Life and Eat Right, Live Longer, were instrumental in the raising of our children because we became vegan back in 1991 after reading the work of Dr. Dean Ornish and used Dr. Barnard's books to help us raise our children. So now, without further ado, I would like to welcome Dr. Neal Barnard.
Thanks to all of you for joining me today. We're going to talk about your body in balance. We're going to talk about health and the surprising connections between foods and hormones and how we feel from day to day. Let me share my screen with you. I have a few slides that I'd like to share. The American Diabetes Association published these data. And what they're looking at is body mass index. Is that a familiar term, BMI? It's your weight, but adjusted for how tall you are. And the red bar on the left, that's meat eaters, non-vegetarians. And their BMI was not below 25, which is where you want to have it for health. It was at 28.8. So your average meat eater, a little bit overweight. And then the second bar, the orange bar, semi-vegetarians, meat less than once a week, a little thinner. And then pesco-vegetarians, what's that? Okay, pesco, fish, but no other meat. A little thinner. And then the lacto-ovo-vegetarians, that's lacto for milk products, ovo for eggs. But none of them are actually in the healthy range on average, except for that blue bar on the right. Now, a vegan is not a person from the planet Vegas. It's just a person who doesn't eat animal products at all. And as you can see, they are not only the slimmest group, but the only group that's in the healthy weight range on average. But the reason the American Diabetes Association published this data was because of this, diabetes. Common in meat eaters, really rare in people following vegan diets. That was inspiring. So the National Institutes of Health funded our research team starting in 2003 to bring in people who had diabetes and test a vegan diet for type 2 diabetes and see how it worked. It was a head-to-head comparison of a plant-based diet versus a conventional diet. Let me walk you through what these mean. A conventional diabetes diet, you go to see the diabetes doctor, nurse practitioner, or whomever, and they say cut calories to lose weight, keep carbohydrate fairly steady so you're never having a big carb fest one day of the week. Limit bad fats, that's saturated fat, trans fats. Now, the plant-based diet was no animal products, keep oils low, and favor low glycemic index foods. If that's a new term for you, white bread is a high glycemic index food. White bread raises your blood sugar. Rye bread is a little bit lower glycemic index food. It doesn't raise your blood sugar that much. Pumpernickel even lower. So all we're saying is favor the low glycemic index foods, beans, fruit, and many others. Okay, very simple. So to cut to the chase, the test we use is hemoglobin A1C, a test of your blood sugar control. And the red line here is the people on the conventional diet. They did pretty well. Their A1C dropped about 0.4 absolute percentage points. Great. But the blue line is the vegan group. And on average, they dropped by 1.2 absolute percentage points, even a little bit more. That's better than any oral diabetes drug. And this was done without counting calories, without increasing their exercise, just by switching the quality of the foods they ate, from animal foods to plant foods. Okay, let me share with you the story of Vance. Vance was one of our first research participants. And when Vance joined our study, he told me what diabetes meant to him. Said he had it all up and down his family tree. He said it means you're going to lose a leg, go blind. Vance's father was dead at 30. Vance himself was diagnosed with diabetes at 31. And he was in his late 30s when he came in to see us, but he started the vegan diet as part of our research study. And early on, he said something that really struck me. He said, this is a really easy diet. I said, what do you mean? People think of a vegan diet as hard. You know, you've got to acquire a taste for folk music or wear tie-dye if you're vegan. Just kidding. He said, no. Old-fashioned diabetes diets say you've got to count calories. You've got to cut maybe 500 calories off your diet every day, so you go to bed hungry every day. You've got to count carb grams and all this stuff. You don't have to do any of that on a vegan diet. You eat whatever you want as long as instead of the meat sauce on your spaghetti, you have the tomato sauce. Instead of the meat chili, you have the bean chili. Really, really simple. And over a year, he lost 60 pounds. His doctor stopped his medication. And his hemoglobin A1C, which was 9.5 to start, which is frankly very poor control, it dropped to 5.3, which happens to be normal. I want to tell you, when I got his lab results back, I closed my office door and I paced around for about 10 minutes, trying to decide, could I tell Vance that he didn't have diabetes anymore? Because when I was in medical school, and I think for maybe every doctor, we were taught that diabetes is a one-way street. Once you've got diabetes, you'll never be rid of it. Once you've got diabetes, you'll always have it. Here was a man on no medications with an absolutely normal hemoglobin A1C. And of course, now we can laugh about this because, I mean, we see diabetes reversal all the time. And by the way, Vance wanted me to tell you his erectile dysfunction, one only two. Okay. So what is a diabetes diet? Fruits, grains, vegetables, legumes. Legumes means beans, peas, lentils, foods that come in a pod, plus vitamin B12, very important. Okay, so let me share with you why this diet works for type 2 diabetes. If you're doing something else, if you're texting or maybe not paying close attention to what I'm saying right now, I want you to watch this. Because so many people have no understanding about how to conquer diabetes, and I'm going to show you how it works. This purple oval is a cell. It's a cell in your body. It could be a muscle cell. Now, muscle cells work on glucose. Your car runs on gasoline, your cells run on glucose. That's their fuel. But the glucose is all around the cell. It's in the blood. It cannot get into the cell. It just bounces off. Glucose cannot get inside your muscle cells. Now, there's a little doorway, but it won't let the glucose in until you have a key, and that key is insulin. Now, if the little kind of photo strip you're seeing on the side of your Zoom screen is blocking out some of the pictures, you can minimize that because I want you to be able to see everything I'm showing you. Okay, so here's the insulin key. Insulin is made in the pancreas. It's a hormone, so it goes from the pancreas through the blood to the surface of your muscle cells, and there it finds a receptor. The key goes into the receptor, just like a key in a lock. The insulin attaches to the receptor and it signals these little channels to open up, and now the glucose can come into the cell. Look at that. Yay, it goes right inside. Okay, insulin lets glucose come into the cell. So what could go wrong? Well, what if my dinner looked like that? And my lunch looked like that? And my breakfast looked kind of like that? And I'm eating a lot of greasy foods? Yeah, these foods have a lot of fat in them, all kinds of it. And what happens? The fat you eat gets into the muscle cells and it stops insulin from working. Let me show you. The fat that you have been eating on pizza, in burgers, wherever, and in fryer grease builds up inside the cell. And when it does, it stops insulin from working. Now doctors hate words like fat. It's got only one syllable, so we'll call it intramyocellular lipid, but that means fat inside a muscle cell. And the buildup of fat means that insulin key can still attach to the surface of the cell, but it will not work. The fat stops insulin from working. Now look at that. The glucose can't get in, it just bounces off. What do? I do what Vance did. I take the animal products out of my diet. And if I do, there's no more animal fat. I keep the vegetable oils very low, and bit by bit, the fat dissipates. And once it does, the key can work again. That insulin resistance is conquered by getting the fat out of the cells, and now the cell can accept glucose again, and everybody's happy. Okay, you with me? It's the fatty foods that we eat, pack fat into the cells that stops insulin from working. That's called insulin resistance, and that is what leads to type 2 diabetes. And that is reversible to a great degree. Okay, we've talked about insulin. Let's shift gears. I want to talk about different hormones. Estrogen, for example. Estrogens, that's a group of sex hormones that affect so many things in a woman's body and in a man's body. This is Robin. I was sitting at my desk one day, my phone rang, and Robin said, Dr. Barnard, I need your help. I said, what's the matter? And she described to me menstrual cramps, which are common, except for about maybe 1 in 10 women, they're off the scale. And she said, I am being tortured. This is not fun. She had had menstrual cramps every month for years, and she had a business trip, and she couldn't figure out how she was going to get on the plane. And I said to her, okay, wait, let me give you some pretty strong painkillers to get you through the next couple of days. But it occurred to me that we might be able to prevent this from happening next month. And so I made a suggestion to her. I said, let me give you some painkillers now. But for the next 4 weeks, would you like to do an experiment with me? No animal products. Keep oils really low. She said, I'll try anything. And she did it. And she called me back 4 weeks later. And she said, Dr. Barnard, this is amazing. My period came, no pain at all. And the month after that, and the month after that, as long as she followed these 2 guidelines, she was fine. But if she started violating them even a little bit, that pain kept roaring back. Okay, so we then did a study with Georgetown University to see if this really would work in a broad group of women. And we brought in women who had menstrual pain. Half of them started the same diet. No animal products, oils to a minimum. The other half got a supplement, placebo capsule that didn't actually do anything. It was a dummy pill. Then after 2 months, 2 cycles, they switched. The diet group got the supplement group got the diet. And then we just tracked what happened to their pain. And the bottom line is it worked. We published our findings in the journal Obstetrics and Gynecology, and pain intensity dropped, pain duration dropped, and even PMS symptoms like moodiness or bloating and water retention got better as well. The effects were variable. Some women got a greater effect than others, but overall it was very significant. So why would that be? Well, let's go back to estrogen. We're controlling estrogen. Okay, this is a woman's monthly cycle. And at the beginning of the month, she doesn't have very much estrogen in the blood. But over the next 2 weeks, it rises to a peak, and then it falls. She's ovulating. The ovary is releasing an egg in anticipation of maybe getting pregnant. So over the next week, then the amount of estrogen rises again to get ready for the pregnancy. The uterus is the most optimistic organ in the body. Every month it thinks this could be it. And so it thickens the lining of the uterus. But wait a minute. After a week, it discovers we're not pregnant. So the disappointed uterus starts to shed the endometrial lining as estrogen level falls back to a very low level. And the next month, it all starts again. Let me show you what this is going to look like. So that pink inner lining, that's the endometrium, and the lining of the uterus. And every month, that thickens up. When Robin called me up, I was making an educated guess that what was happening is that the foods she was eating were causing that endometrial lining to over thicken, and it was releasing prostaglandins that cause pain. So how do I change that? How can foods get my hormones back into balance? Well, researchers have found 2 things. Fiber reduces estrogens. Now, fiber, don't go to sleep. I know that's a boring word, fiber. Fiber is big stuff. Fiber is the roughage in vegetables and fruits and beans and whole grains. Fiber reduces estrogens and fat does the opposite. It increases estrogens. How do we know that? Back in 1991, the American Health Foundation did a study. They brought in a group of women. They gave them more fiber from 14 grams a day up to 30, and they measured their estrogen levels. And they dropped. For some reason in this study, wheat fiber really worked. Oats and corn didn't seem to work. We couldn't quite figure out why. But then a few years later at Tufts University, researchers brought in 48 women. They locked them up into a metabolic ward and did a whole group of tests. Each one was 8 to 10 weeks long, and they reduced their fat, cut it in half, and increased their fiber. They did either both or each of these independently. And they teased this out in a metabolic ward where everyone was there. The diets, they kept the calories constant, they kept their weight constant. And what they showed is just reducing fat reduces a whole slew of estrogens in a woman's body. That's right. If you're not eating so much fat, your estrogen level gently falls. And independent of that, if you increase fiber, that's vegetables, fruits, beans, whole grains, if the same thing happens, estrogen levels fall. And if you do both simultaneously, which Robin was doing with the plant-based diet, it's high in fiber and naturally low in fat, you get the best of both worlds. Okay, let me show you graphically what's happening with fiber. This is the liver. The liver at the top of the screen pulls excess estrogens out of the blood, and it sends them through that green biliary tree, that's the common bile duct there at the bottom there. It sends the estrogens into the intestinal tract, and there they're carried out with the waste. But this only works if you have fiber. The fiber from the fruits that you've eaten or the beans or the whole grains carries the estrogens through the intestinal tract, and you literally flush them down the toilet. But what if your lunch was salmon or yogurt or an omelet? How much fiber is there in those foods? Well, there isn't any. There's no fiber in animal products. It's only in plants. So if you don't have enough fiber, that estrogen in your intestinal tract is reabsorbed into the bloodstream. And it recirculates around and around and around. And most women on meaty diets have extra circulating estrogens in their blood all the time. The answer, bring in the fiber that interrupts that circulation and sends the fiber down into the toilet where you want it to go. All right, I want to make sure everybody's paying attention. Spam, fiber or no fiber? What do you think? You can tell me in the chat if you like. Does spam have fiber? I don't think so. So I've got my trash can and there it goes. KFC, does it have fiber? Well, there's fiber in the carton it comes in. That's it. So no, chicken doesn't have any fiber at all. That can go away. Now, there are some foods that had fiber before they went into the factory, and bit by bit in the processing, the fiber is removed, so that can go too. All right. Now, we've talked about the effect of increasing fiber, reducing fat, and a completely vegan diet is the best way to do it, but there's more to it. This plant-based diet helps people lose weight. It's one of the best ways, it's the best way to reduce body weight. If you have unwanted body fat, best thing to do. Now, the loss of body fat will help you with hormones too. This is a fat cell. And fats take male hormones, testosterone, and turn them into estrogens, female hormones. That's right. In both men and women, if you have more body fat, male hormones are converted to female hormones. This will not be on the test, but androstenedione goes to estrone, testosterone goes to estradiol. Male hormones get turned into female hormones. This is why you go to the beach in August and you see guys who are heavy set, and they might have a little bit of breast development. That's because the body fat is making estrogens. Happens in a woman's body too. If she has extra body fat, her body is making estrogens. It can be too much estrogen. It can create problems. So it helps to boost the fiber and cut the fat. Anything else? Yeah, there is one other thing. I want to illustrate this with Catherine. Catherine she was in the Air Force. She grew up in Louisiana. And in 2003, the government sent her to Iraq to design military bases. When you're in a war zone and you're eating what the government gives you and you're working really hard, you don't gain much weight. And when Catherine's tour of duty came to an end and she was shipped back stateside, her friends took her out to eat. They said, Catherine, what did you miss while you were overseas? And she said, I missed cheese. Macaroni and cheese. Cheese snacks, cheese everything. And so a friend of hers, for her birthday, actually gave her a whole case of 48 boxes of macaroni and cheese, which she ate every day for 48 days straight. I'm not making this up. Well, she developed weight gain, but she also started to develop some pain in her abdomen. It got especially bad with her periods. This was endometriosis. If you look into the abdomen through a laparoscope, you see implantations of cells. These are endometrial cells, the cells that are supposed to be lining the uterus, but for some reason they have sneaked out. Apparently they crawl out through the fallopian tubes, and they're now implanting all around the abdomen, on the intestinal tract, on the ovaries, on the fallopian tubes, and they cause pain, but they also can cause infertility. And that was her situation. So the doctor gave her painkillers, gave her hormonal treatments. They didn't really work. And the doctor said, well, I've got one other thing for you. If you just can't function, we can do a hysterectomy. Well, she was 27, and she and her husband hadn't started their family yet, and she wasn't so sure she wanted to have her reproductive organs removed. But it got to the point where she just couldn't function. And her doctor said, you know what? The endometriosis has probably rendered you infertile anyway. Just have it all out. You'll feel better. Okay. So she signed up for the hysterectomy. They scheduled it 6 weeks later. But before she could have the operation, a friend introduced her to a nutrition expert who gave her the diet effectively that we had tried for menstrual pain. No animal products, keeping oils really low, very simple vegetables, fruits, whole grains, beans. And Catherine started to feel better. Her weight came down, her pain started to diminish, her energy got better. But the pain didn't go away. There was a little residual pain left. And so she showed up for her hysterectomy 6 weeks later. They anesthetized her. They started the procedure. An hour later, she woke up in the recovery room. And her gynecologist was there, shaking her on the shoulder, saying, you got to wake up. I need to tell you something. I looked inside, and your endometriosis is gone. The only reason you had any residual pain was that you had scarring where it used to be, and you had some adhesions from where it used to be. All I had to do was free up those adhesions, but I didn't take your uterus out. You still got it. I didn't do the hysterectomy at all. And her mother was in the recovery room, and her mother said, well, she went vegan. The doctor said, stop it. Foods don't cause endometriosis, and there's no way that a diet change is going to make it go away. There's only one explanation for this. This has got to be a miracle. Well, miracle or not, kudos for that doctor for not taking out her uterus. But what the doctor missed is that when you change your diet, you change your hormones. And when you take the hormone pressure off, the endometriosis can improve. And in her case, apparently go away. She lost a lot of weight. She felt dramatically better. And it turned out she wasn't infertile at all. There she's got her 3 children. And Catherine has actually joined the Physicians Committee's team to teach other women how to take control of their life and how to avoid surgery. Okay, so I mentioned that she loved cheese. What's that about? Does cheese have hormones in it? Well, cheese comes from milk. It comes out of a cow, right? Cows are impregnated every year. That's right. Every dairy cow is artificially inseminated. And yes, you've heard it, their calves are taken away. That's all true. Because if you impregnate cows, and we take their calves away, then that makes extra milk on a continuous basis. They are milked during much of their pregnancy. Pregnant cows make estrogens and progesterone that get into the milk, and you drink it. So mac and cheese, grilled cheese, ice cream, whole milk, skim milk, they all have estrogens in them. That's right, there's no such thing as hormone-free milk because the cows make it. All right, so dietary steps for cramps. If you know somebody, whatever age they are, and they've got menstrual cramps, instead of thinking it's all got to be painkillers or just put up with it, welcome to womanhood, no, wait a minute. Reduce the fat, increase the fiber, and the best way to do that is with a low-fat, completely vegan diet, skip the dairy. And see if your cramps don't go away or improve dramatically. Okay, by the way, it's not only does a low-fat vegan diet work, but it turns out that relatively modest deviations can really lead the pain to come back. So you bring the greasy foods back in, even early in your cycle, you'll see the pain at the end of the month. Try it, you'll see exactly what I mean. Okay, I want to switch gears. I want to talk about fertility now. In the research study that I mentioned, where we brought in people who had pain to see if a diet would help, we asked all the participants not to use any hormone medication, including birth control pills, because that would confuse the results of the study. So if the women were sexually active, we asked them to use some other kind of contraception. But one of the women in the study said, Dr. Barnard, you don't have to worry about me. I don't use any contraception at all because I'm infertile. My husband and I were evaluated years ago. It's not him, it's me. I don't ovulate. I'm infertile. We don't need contraception. Don't worry. Well, the second month that she was on the low-fat vegan diet, she came into the research center. She said, Dr. Barnard, I got some bad news and I got some good news. The bad news is I am dropping out of your research study because the good news is I am pregnant. And she was pregnant. She eventually had 3 children. And we were awestruck by the fact that in the same ways as Robin had the diagnosis of dysmenorrhea, and she had a diagnosis of infertility, and Catherine had the diagnosis of endometriosis, you can perhaps take your number 2 lead pencil and erase all of these diagnoses and say, wait a minute, you're just not in hormone balance. And when we get your body in balance, you have no idea of the power that foods can have. Okay, let's walk through it a little bit. How do foods affect female infertility? Well, the first thing is a low-fat vegan diet reduces body weight, and that helps a lot. The sweet spot for fertility, the lowest infertility, the best fertility, is with a BMI between about 18 and maybe 22. That's kind of the skinny side of normal. If you're much heavier than that, you're going to discover that your body chemistry is off and infertility rears up. The same is true if you are overly thin. If your BMI is below about 18 and a half, that's getting to the point where your ovaries might shut down. So you want to follow a healthy plant-based diet to help your weight get towards the optimal range. Now there's something though about milk, about the milk sugar. You know the milk sugar, lactose. A lot of people can't digest it. If you do digest it, something bad happens actually. It breaks down to produce glucose and galactose. And galactose has been understudied for its effect on fertility. This is really the work of Dan Kramer at Harvard University. He brought in he brought in data from a variety of locations looking at women and the change in fertility as they go from their late 20s to their late 30s. So let's say a woman is 25, 26, 27, 28. And then if you compare her fertility now to her fertility 10 years from now, it changes, it drops. And so he looked at different countries and he looked at dairy consumption. Now, Thailand, is ice cream a big Thai food? I don't think so. Not very much milk is consumed in Thailand, and the drop in fertility between late 20s and the late 30s is about 25%. Brazil, a little more dairy, and the drop in fertility between the late 20s and late 30s, about 50%. United States, big dairy country, and the drop in fertility is about 80% as women reach their late 30s. Same thing in New Zealand. And if you put all the other countries that we have data for into the graph, it's not perfect, but you can see a pattern. More milk, more infertility, a bigger drop in fertility. And we think it's the galactose that's doing it. Why do we say that? Because we already knew that galactose is linked to ovarian cancer. Women who consume the most dairy have a higher risk of ovarian cancer. Something about the galactose appears to be toxic to the ovaries. And let me show you, for any scientists in the audience or doctors in the audience, this is a forest plot. Every line here is a study. And if the black dots there, the little black squares, are to the right of that center line, that means that dairy consumption is associated with higher ovarian cancer risk. And with just one exception, all the studies show that. So it's very consistent evidence that something about dairy products is increasing the risk of cancer of the ovary, and it looks like it's also interfering with fertility. You want to baby your ovaries, treat them right. You don't want ovarian cancer, you don't want infertility. What about men? Could dairy products influence male fertility? Well, researchers looked at men in a fertility clinic, Some of them consumed not too much cheese, about a half serving per day. Some had 1 to 2.5 servings of cheese per day, and those having the most cheese had disrupted fertility. Lower sperm counts, worse sperm morphology, that's the shape, less sperm motility, that's their ability to move. Something about cheese is interfering with fertility in men. And what the researchers speculate is that it has to do with estrogens. Remember, the cow is milked. The cow is pregnant during much of the milking. The estrogens get into the milk, it's concentrated in the cheese, and Hank has a cheese pizza. And he's consuming traces of estrogen every single day. Now, it's only traces, it's not very much. But researchers have found that it is more than enough to affect fundamental biology. Okay. Infertility, menstrual pain, endometriosis, they won't kill you. But breast cancer can. And hormones drive breast cancer. Estrogens are sneaky little molecules. They're these little pink dots. They can sneak through the cell membrane. They can then sneak through the nuclear membrane. They can attach to the DNA in the center of a breast cell. And when they do, it can become an abnormal cell that instead of staying still, it splits into 2. And then it becomes 4, and then 8, and 16. That's a growing mass of cancer. Am I saying that the estrogens in your body can cause cancer? That's exactly what I'm saying. Hormones need to be in balance. All hormones need to be in balance. If you have too little, if you have too much, they can create all kinds of problems. So estrogens increase the risk of breast cancer. Researchers in 2002 combined the results of 9 prospective studies, and they looked at women with breast cancer and who didn't have breast cancer, and look what they showed. The more estrogen you have in your blood, the higher your risk of breast cancer. It's a very clear-cut relationship. I'm not talking now necessarily just about the estrogens that a woman would swallow. Yep, they can lead to cancer too. But I'm talking about the estrogens your body makes. And how do we tackle them? You guessed it. High fiber, low fat, vegan diet. Okay. Now, researchers released a paper earlier this year looking at dairy products and breast cancer. And this is our Adventist friends again. And researchers looked at milk consumption and breast cancer risk. And what you see, look around along the x-axis at the bottom, you see going from no dairy to a 1/4 cup. Do you see that there? A 1/2 cup of dairy, 1 cup, 2 cups, 4 cups per day. And the higher you are on the x-axis, that's the likelihood of developing breast cancer. So once a person is having, just a 1/2 cup a day? A cup, 2 cups? Doesn't seem like very much, does it? Breast cancer clearly increases. All right, milk was designed for a cow to nourish a growing calf, and even the calves don't drink milk after the age of weaning. The only reason people do it is because we have a dairy industry pushing on us, and it's been a cultural thing. Mother Nature always thought we should be getting our calcium from green leafy vegetables. You don't need milk at all. Now, what about people who have breast cancer already? It turns out research studies have shown that the more high-fat dairy you have in your diet, the higher the likelihood of dying of that cancer. In this study, which was from 2013, women consuming the most high-fat dairy had a 49% increased risk of dying of their cancer compared to women consuming the least. All right, what about soy? Have you heard people say that soy might cause cancer? Turns out the opposite is true. Soy products have isoflavones like genistein, and they do sort of look like estradiol. And in fact, they will even attach to the estrogen receptor, which led people to think maybe they'd increase cancer risk. But in 2004, a meta-analysis of 8 prior studies showed that individuals consuming the most soy had a 29% reduction in breast cancer. And better than that, women who had had cancer in the past, if they ate more soy, it reduced their likelihood of dying of their cancer, again, by about 30%. So soy products reduce cancer risk. How can that be? Well, I just said that soy products attach to estrogen receptors. Analogy, get into your car. In your car, if you look at the floor on the driver's side, what do you see? You see a gas pedal, right? You step on the gas, what happens? Your car goes. Right next to it is the brake. Step on the brake and what happens? Car stops. There are 2 kinds of estrogen receptors. There's alpha receptors, there's beta receptors, and soy attaches to the beta receptor Think of soy as the brake. Soy is the brakes on cancer. You with me? Okay. So soy is optional. You don't have to have it, but it doesn't cause cancer. If anything, it reduces the risk of cancer. Okay, last hormone I want to talk a little bit about is thyroid hormone. Your thyroid is here at the base of your neck, and it oversees your body's use of energy, okay? You can be hypothyroid. Hypothyroid means your thyroid isn't making enough thyroid hormone, so you're not getting the energy you need, and you feel crummy, you feel weak, you're sensitive to cold, your digestive tract isn't working, everything's really kind of out of sorts. Even your mood isn't good. Now, the opposite can happen. You can be hyperthyroid, too much thyroid hormone, and kind of the opposite happens. You usually lose weight, you're feeling, or you got a rapid pulse, you're nervous, you're irritable, you can't sleep, you're revved up. Okay, what could cause all this? Well, this is thyroid hormone. And that thyroid hormone molecule, you see those little purple round bits? That is iodine. And you need iodine to make thyroid hormone. Where do I find it? Well, 1924, the Morton Company started marketing iodized salt. They just added iodine to salt. And that kind of wiped out iodine deficiency in the United States. However, we are modern people, so we have sea salt, Himalayan salt, kosher salt that may not be iodized. And if so, people can run low on iodine, and they wake up in the morning and they stand on the scale and they notice they've gained a pound, and their energy's not good, and they look at their hair and it doesn't seem right. They could be low in thyroid. Well, the dairy industry will say, well, there's iodine in milk, and there is. You know where it comes from? Cows' udders are treated with iodine disinfectants. That's right. The cow's udder can get into mud, and it can get feces on it, and it can be encrusted with milk, so that all dairy cows have their teats cleaned with an iodine-containing disinfectant. And so traces of the disinfectant and feces and caked milk and mud and whatnot gets into the milk. Not a lot, but a little bit. But it's a measurable amount of iodine, and so they will market it as a great source of iodine from the disinfectant. Iodine is sometimes supplemented in cows' diets, but let me tell you, that's not the best source. My favorite source actually is seaweed. That's right. Americans don't eat a lot of seaweed, but they should. If you went to a sushi bar, and don't get the fish sushi, but get the cucumber roll, the asparagus roll, the nori that it's wrapped in is seaweed. It's high in iodine. The wakame that's in your miso soup, high in iodine. Ereme. Ereme is a very nice, light seaweed. And in fact, in my book, Your Body in Balance, I have the best salad recipe you ever had. You slice cucumbers just very, very thin, put on some ereme seaweed, douse it in seasoned rice vinegar, totally delicate, delicious, wonderful. You're gonna love it. That's ereme. People are not familiar with this. You're gonna wanna run over to the health food store, try it out. Seaweeds are great with iodine, okay? Now, the most common reason though, for being low thyroid or high thyroid in the United States isn't about iodine, it's about antibodies. There are antibodies in your blood that are attacking your thyroid gland. They can attack the thyroid gland so that it can't make thyroid hormone so much anymore. Or they can attack the thyroid regulatory machinery so that it can't turn off and you're making too much. Okay, so can foods drive this process? Yes, let's go back to the Adventist Health Study and see what they did. They showed that vegans have relatively little hypothyroidism. The people who have the most are lacto-ovo-vegetarians. They're not eating meat, but they're making up for it with cheese, dairy products. And when it comes to hyperthyroidism, the people who do the worst are the omnivores who are having dairy and meat. And vegans do the best in both cases. So could a plant-based diet somehow protect you? Or putting it the other way, could it be that proteins in dairy and proteins in meat are triggering the body to make antibodies? It's as if your body is saying, wait a minute, am I being attacked by a virus or a bacterium? It's the proteins in the meat or the milk that are masquerading. Your body thinks it might be a virus, so it makes antibodies to knock it out. And then those same antibodies attack your thyroid gland, or they attack the regulatory system for the thyroid gland. If they're attacking the gland itself, that's Hashimoto's thyroiditis, a very common form of hypothyroidism. If they are attacking the regulatory machinery of it, that's Graves' disease. It doesn't mean it's a really bad disease, although it is. It's named for Robert Graves. That's a common form of hyperthyroidism, okay? So researchers have speculated that if we get the animal products out of our diet, maybe we can cool down those antibodies. So a number of individuals have tried this with success, but let me encourage you, to understand, we don't have randomized trials yet that have put it to the test. We don't really know if it works in a broad group of individuals, but talk to your endocrinologist, say, I want to try this, and there's no contraindication to a healthy vegan diet. Fruits, grains, legumes, vegetables. Don't forget your vitamin B12. You need it for healthy blood. You need it for healthy nerves. You don't need much. 2.4 micrograms a day. Just go to the health food store. Get the smallest B12 brand that they sell. Take it every day, and you're going to be set. So by now, you might be thinking, I'd love to try this. If I could reverse my diabetes, if I could get menstrual pain to go away, if I could deal with infertility, if I could get my energy back, wouldn't that be fantastic? But a vegan diet sounds challenging. How do I do this? My family's going to divorce me. Okay, it's really, really easy. We break it into 2 steps. Step 1, take 7 days, 1 week. Don't take anything out of your diet, just check out the possibilities. Think through what you would eat if you're vegan. Take a piece of paper and fill it out with breakfasts, lunches, dinners, snacks that are completely plant-based that you would actually like. Okay, let me give you some ideas. Oatmeal, blueberry pancakes without the butter. Bran flakes instead of cow's milk, try the almond milk. If you haven't tasted these things, try them out. Whatever you like, if you like it, write it down. Lunches and dinners, try a pizza without cheese. Try the chili, that's a bean chili instead of a meat chili, or whatever, okay? If you've never had a veggie burger, maybe now's the time to give it a try. You got 7 days to fill out your list. And you discover that restaurants have lots of choices, whether it's the Italian spaghetti marinara, spaghetti arrabbiata, whether it's the veggie fajitas, bean burritos at a Latin American restaurant, Chinese rice, vegetables, tofu dishes, or you go to the sushi bar with friends and you've got the cucumber rolls and asparagus rolls and edamame and all kinds of wonderful salads. Fast food, not the pinnacle of culinary art, but they've got you covered with some options. Try them out, write them down. All right, a week has gone by. I've got my list. And now step 2. Step 2 is 3 weeks. Do a 3-week test drive. All vegan, all the time, 100% plant-based. If you've done this carefully, at the end of 21 days, 2 things will happen. One is you are physically healthier. You're losing weight. If you have diabetes, your blood sugar might be coming down. You're feeling better. But you're also discovering that the way you feel about foods is changing. You're thinking differently about foods, and that can be really, really cool, okay? Let me share with you some resources that I'd like you to check out. This is a free app, the 21-Day Vegan Kickstart. It's on your iPhone or your Android. It's in English, it's in Spanish. It has menus, recipes, and cooking videos, all for free. It's not promoting or selling anything. This is my new book, Your Body in Balance, where I wanted to take everything we've talked about today and a lot more and put it in a user-friendly format. And the first part deals with fertility, cramps, cancer, PCOS, menopause. The second part deals with metabolic conditions, erectile dysfunction, diabetes, thyroid conditions, skin, moodiness. And then part 3 talks about what is a healthy diet and what about all the environmental contaminants that we need to contend with too. And it's a step-by-step program to get you back in balance. And we have menus and recipes that I want to brag about. Lindsay Nixon did these wonderful recipes, 65 of them, which she sent to me along with a note that said, I hope you like the recipes. They're quick, they're easy to make, they're all low-fat and vegan. And Lindsay also said that eating this way is what cured her cramps too. So I'm going to call that validation. So the old idea was, all right, if I eat the wrong foods, I might gain weight, have high cholesterol, have diabetes. Let's get more sophisticated. Eat healthy foods, use them to control your hormones. And now you have power that you never had before over a broad range of conditions. And then the other thing is, don't keep this to yourself. This is important. Let's learn together. Let's connect with people we know, and let's share this information. Somewhere, there's a 15-year-old girl who's on the floor of the bathroom at school because she's doubled up with pain because she's got menstrual cramps. She goes to the nurse's office and they say, well, welcome to motherhood, or welcome to womanhood. It's just your fate. Somewhere there's a couple that feels they're infertile. That's what the doctor told them. Maybe it's God's will. Well, I got to tell you, it's not God's will. This is Kraft's will, or the will of the food industry, perhaps. These things can change. There are people who are at higher risk for cancer, higher risk for diabetes. We need to change this. Now, nothing is perfect. The body is fragile, and you can do really, really well with your diet and still have problems. But we want to do everything we can to be healthy, and we want to share this information with people who are suffering now. So what that means is get on your social media, let your friends know, let's be loud, let's make some noise. The industry is out there advertising the most unhealthy foods and making them seem cool. But there are far more worried parents, worried teachers, worried principals, worried folks who want things to be better. I know that everybody who's participating in this is one of them. Let's work together. Let's spread the word. And before we go, I want to share with you a really important thing that you can do locally right here in Rochester. My good friend, Dr. Carrie Graff, has designed the 4-Leaf 101 program. I want you to sign up for this program. You're going to learn how to make healthy breakfasts. You're going to really focus on it, and they are going to be wonderful and delicious and easy to do. Healthy lunches, healthy dinners. You're going to have plenty of time to troubleshoot. And I'd like you to have a look at the Forks Over Knives plan book. It's recommended, not required, but you are going to love it. And you see the number on your screen at the bottom. Give her a call or email. Again, Dr. Carrie Graff, she knows what she's talking about. She's going to help you and help your family. Okay, let me stop at that point. I'm going to unshare my screen and back to you, Dr. Barnett.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was reading this book. I got kind of distracted. So anyway, thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. I'm sure I can hear applause out there and virtual land there. Just a reminder, this was co-sponsored by the JCC of Greater Rochester. And so that was just a wonderful presentation. We had some really interesting questions come up, and I hardly know where to start. But how about, you know, when you talk about intracellular fat, that always gets people interested. So here's a question: do you have to be overweight to have fat muscle cells?
Oh, what a great question. The short answer is no. In fact, there was a terrific research study done at Yale University by Kit Peterson and Jerry Schulman, who are leading diabetes researchers. They brought in individuals who were in their late 20s, thin. The average weight was 132 in one group, 141 pounds in the other group. And they, through magnetic resonance spectroscopy, they measured the fat inside their cells and found that many of them were already building up fat, and that caused them to be insulin resistant. The point I'm making is this starts 15 or 20 years before the diabetes is diagnosed. So yeah, this happens in thin people.
Okay, interesting. And a question from one of my, let's see, from one of my OBGYN friends, Dr. Michelle Chin. She asks, does the fat in avocado and nuts cause intracellular lipids that block insulin?
Yeah, it does. All fats contribute to it. Now, there's a lot of evidence that saturated fats may be worse, and animal fats are much higher in saturated fat. With an avocado, it's like maybe 9% saturated fat. With chicken, it's 30% saturated fat. With cheese, it's about 60-some%. So the animal products are always the worst fats. But if you are trying to reverse diabetes, get the animal products out of your diet completely, but keep the fatty foods low too. Even the guac, the peanut butter, the nuts, the added oils, keep them all really low and see if you can't reach your goal. Yeah, and that's certainly been our experience with our patients going through our programs, that cutting out the oil and all the high-fat plant foods certainly helps with diabetes. There was a bunch of questions, I'll try to combine these, about soy. Is it safe for women, peri or menopausal women? What about in breast cancer? And is there any evidence that a vegan diet prevents breast cancer recurrence? So kind of lumping those together with soy. Great question. Okay, first of all, about soy. Soy products reduce the likelihood that cancer will occur, and also reduce the likelihood that a woman previously diagnosed with cancer will have that cancer come back. So these are observational studies, but it's very, very consistent. And so most authorities are really quite confident that soy is not only safe, but it has health benefits. So yeah, soy gets a green light. It's totally optional, you don't need it. But the sad news is that a lot of well-meaning but ill-informed oncologists have told women with breast cancer, I would avoid the soy if I were you. you just condemned that woman to about a 30% higher risk of dying of her cancer. So no, soy is okay. There have been a number of studies on dietary changes and survival after breast cancer diagnosis. And what they show is that reducing fat is associated with better survival, increasing vegetables and fruits is associated with better survival, and lacing up your sneakers and exercising is associated with better survival. So I would do all three. There's plenty of room for controversy about what's the best diet, but evidence strongly suggests a diet that helps you keep your weight low, extremely high in vegetables and fruits, minimizing alcohol, all these things are going to help.
Thank you. That's very interesting. What about, let's see here. There was a question about my daughter has become vegan, but she still hasn't lost weight. And could it be the high-fat plant foods, the oils, the peanut butter, avocado, et cetera?
Yeah, it really can be. If you've gone vegan, you've done a great thing. And for most people, you're going to start losing weight. If you're stuck, write down everything you ate over a 24-hour period and look for foods high in vegetable oil, nuts, nut products, avocados. And when I say foods high in vegetable oil, if the product is, say, an apple or a sprig of broccoli, it doesn't have a label, you get a free pass, eat all you want. But if it's got a label, like a frozen pizza, look at the fat grams per serving. If it's above 3, it's going to get in your way. And what you're going to discover is that a lot of processed foods are way above 3. They're packing extra oil in because it gives a mouthfeel that makes it sell, but it's going to pack fat into your diet.
Right. Can you talk a little bit about the thyroid? So actually, I had a bunch of questions. There's a number of people who seem to be taking thyroid medication. Now, let me ask this question. Can you speak a little more about synthroid dosing for those of us on a plant-based diet? I don't have an endocrinologist. I'm a physician. Are there any resources or reports? And then there was another question that came up the other day about B12 interacting with thyroxine. I don't know, are you familiar with that? Making it hard to control thyroid levels?
No, I can't speak to the interaction between B12 and thyroid. But anybody who's got a thyroid condition and is on Synthroid really should be at least occasionally monitored by your endocrinologist. Right. And what you do, it's just like dealing with diabetes. Let your endocrinologist or your other physician know that you're going to change your diet. Mm-hmm. And your doctor can then work with you to back you off your medications and test you appropriately and see if you can do without it. And don't be discouraged. Let's say you were diagnosed with low thyroid at age 19 and you've been on thyroid hormones and you're now 45. You can still give this a try and see if it will help you. But this does not mean throw your pills away or cancel your doctor's appointment. Work with your caregiver, get tested appropriately, and see how you do. If you have diabetes, it is especially important to work with your caregiver. A low-fat vegan diet is extremely powerful. And if you're treated with insulin or a sulfonylurea drug, you are very likely to get hypoglycemic if your doctor just keeps treating you with the same drug without backing off. So let your doctor know you're doing it and let the doctor work with you to back you off the drugs in a smart way as time goes on.
Sounds great. Now, actually, here's an interesting question. This is from somebody who actually works with the Dean Ornish program. And she says, what do you recommend for sleep? I chronically wake up in the middle of the night and can't get back to sleep for a few hours or wake up around 4 a.m. I meditate, practice great sleep hygiene, exercise, and have been whole food plant-based for 3 years. I am also close to menopause, desperate for sleep. What should I do? Question mark.
Win the lottery.
Yeah.
Yes. Nothing is going to make the worries of modern life go away. And if the troubles of the day before are bothering you, it's going to interfere with sleep. But let me walk you through normal sleep hygiene just just to make sure that we've got it said. If your day includes caffeine in any form, even a cup of tea, everybody is different. And for some people, about a quarter of the caffeine that you've got in the morning is still in your blood at bedtime. And so it's circulating around and it makes your sleep just a little lighter. So that instead of sleeping all the way through, you just things will wake you up. Number 2, alcohol. You have just a glass of wine, it's fashionable, whatever, and it lulls you to sleep. But in the middle of the night, your liver turns it into an aldehyde, which is a stimulant, and that wakes you up too. The third thing is you need exercise. If your muscles are not tired, you don't sleep. Now, a lot of us all day long, the only muscles we are dealing with is our thumbs on our iPhone, something like that. And if you get good physical exercise, that will help you sleep. if you don't sleep, then the next day you're going to discover that you'll just eat anything to get through the day, and it kind of becomes a really vicious cycle. So try those things. And let me share you one last goofy little tip. Let's assume that you've won the lottery and you're doing all these things and life is wonderful, but you're still having trouble sleeping. Try this thing. This will sound crazy, but I want you to try it. About a half hour before bed, stretch out and make a big yawn. Why am I asking you to do that? Because if you look at 4-year-old kids, they all, about a half hour before sleep, they all start stretching and yawning, and they do it over and over again, then they lie down and go to sleep. If you have a dog, your dog does it too. Your cat does it. I had a lab rat that was rescued from a laboratory, and she would stretch out her little rat paw and give a big yawn, and she would sleep, fall asleep then too. But what do? We're adults. We read our book, we close it, we try to close our eyes, we try to go to sleep. Something about the stretching and yawning process primes the brain to get ready for sleep. So tonight, when you get home, half hour beforehand, stretch out, make a big stretch, and make a yawn, even if it's fake. Just open your mouth and make a yawn, and then it will become real, and do it 4 times. And then go to sleep and just see if you don't sleep better. Why does it work? I have no idea, but it's somehow priming the brain for sleep. I know it sounds kooky. Give it a try.
That's interesting advice. I can't wait. I'm going to visualize everybody out there tonight doing that.
Yes, and we were talking earlier about music. You got to check out this song that my band did, Carbonworks did. You go to the YouTube, go to the Carbonworks channel, and there is a song called Everything's All Right, and it's in French, Tout ira bien, and it's all yawning animals that I made to try to calm down children during COVID. And the whole idea is to calm people down during these goofy, troubled, crazy times, and to hopefully everyone will be able to get a good night's sleep at least now and then.
Oh, that's a great advice. Thank you for sharing that video. I started watching it, but then we had to check in here.
Teamwork, right?
Yeah. Let's see. What about contaminants that are in plant-based foods due to farming practices? Should we be concerned?
Yeah, I think we should be concerned. In Your Body and Balance, I have a whole chapter about that. And if we are despoiling foods, and it's not just the foods, it's the whole environment that's being ruined by these things. But that is not a reason to be consuming animal products. In North Dakota, where I grew up, mile after mile, all the corn plants and all the soy plants are raised with pesticides, irrigation, fertilizer, because that is cattle feed, right, or chicken feed or pig feed, and it's despoiling the environment. It's true that if you're consuming plant foods, you want to get organic to the extent that you can, get non-GMO to the extent you can, and wash them when you get home. So you do want to be careful about it, but it's certainly not a reason to go back to animal products.
Thank you. So here's one. This is important. Are you recommending that everyone take vitamin B12?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's a given. Really, anybody, even if you're not on a vegan diet, if you're over 50, you probably should be getting B12. And it's very easy to take B12. Just get pretty much any dose, and take it depending on the size. It's either once a day or once a week. Yeah, so that's a great question.
Yeah, let me give you just a couple more details. Most of the people in the hematology clinics who are low in B12 are not vegans.
Right.
You do need B12. Most of the people in the hematology clinic are taking metformin. And so it's interfering with B12 absorption, or they're on an acid blocker, or they're over 50, so they're not making stomach acid anymore, and they're low in B12. If you take a B12 pill, it's easily absorbable even without stomach acid. The amount you need is 2.4 micrograms. All the pills have more than that. But get the lowest one that you can. Don't overdose on it too much. If it's 100, 200, 500 micrograms a day, perfectly fine. Mm-hmm. But that's it. Right. So I got time for one last question, and then we'll say goodnight.
Okay. Let's see. There was a question about where is that? Can the government ethically recommend meat and dairy?
Great question. Ethically, no. And I want to say the American Medical Association just wrote a letter last month to the USDA saying, stop. I'm not making this up. The American Medical Association wrote to the USDA saying, why are we promoting milk, promoting meat, when it's causing cancer, cardiovascular disease, which also happen to take a disproportionate toll among Black populations in particular. And they weren't actually calling the guidelines racist, but if you read between the lines, promoting meat, promoting milk is encouraging deaths of all groups, but especially in certain groups, and it's got to stop.
Right.
Anyway, I want to thank you, Ted. I want to thank everyone who's joined us tonight. I really appreciate you staying a little bit over time so that we can go through some of these comments. Do have a look at Dr. Graf's program. You will not regret taking it and bringing a friend along.
Yeah, thank you so much, Neal. And just one reminder, next week at this time, we'll have Dr. Michael Greger. So check that out as well. Neal, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. A round of applause from everybody. And thank you to our engineer, Bob Frankie.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.